2011 meeting of the Lowell Conservation Commission. If you have a cell phone or a pager on, kindly turn it off or turn it to silent. Thank you. Moving on to order of business. This is a continuation from the last meeting, which is a request for determination of applicability, TEC Associates. The project location is various locations bordering along the Massachusetts Bay commuter railroad's right-of-way regarding vegetation spraying. We're in communication. It was a clarification from last meeting regarding whether to issue a -5 or a +2A. And from what I understand, Kyle Fair, who is their project manager, has responded that a 2A would be acceptable to them. I'm just going to open it up if there's any other questions. The chair notes that there's no one here to speak on behalf of that. Commissioner Chaluka?
I see in his email it says as long as it doesn't require filing of a notice of intent. So if it's a positive determination, that would require a notice of intent, right?
Normally, any positive determination does require a notice of intent, but under the method for putting together a vegetation management plan outlined in 310 CMAR, the wetland regulations, it says they get a determination, or they apply with a request for a determination of applicability to delineate the wetland boundaries. And by issuing a +2A, we are stating our agreement with their delineation. But then to go forward, as prescribed by state law, they then proceed to the state level, once again, as we discussed. So I did touch base with the Mass DEP about how to view these. If you remember the last meeting, we had 2 different vegetation management plans that were coming through with a request for determination of applicability. Mass DEP had indicated to me that a +2A would be an appropriate route to take. So that was what I was working under, and it was brought to our attention that the applicant had specifically requested a -5 if we did agree with their boundaries, and so that was the continuance to determine if that was appropriate. And the applicant has indicated that they thought that that would work.
Commissioner Varnum? I have no questions. Let me get this straight. They're requesting a -5 now?
No, I'm sorry. Originally,
they were requesting a -5.
yes. Subsequently, between the filing and the hearing, I had touched base with the Mass DEP regarding both RDAs for the railroad right-of-way management, vegetation management. And they had indicated that a +2A was the correct determination if the commission agreed with their wetland delineation. That has not changed. It's simply that because they had requested a -5 they had requested something where there was a difference of opinion. I thought they should go a different way with the way to do it. And I wanted to make sure, so long as the wetland delineation was acceptable, and that's really the issue at hand for the commission to determine, then to figure out the proper way to permit it.
Thank you. Commissioner Mellon?
No questions.
Commissioner Lynch?
No questions.
All right. It was just a question of procedurally how we were to proceed on this. This is very much in line with the prior one and ones that we've done in years past. So I think at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to issue a +2A determination on this request. So if I have that motion.
I move to issue a +2A determination for the Tech Associates project.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Lynch. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Moving on to new business, notice of intent. Mayank Patel, oh, I'm going to need help with this, I'm sorry. Boshas Swasi Shri Akshar Purushottam Sanstra. How did I do? Not very well, I don't think. 50 Stedman Street, we're still awaiting a DEP file number, and what that means is we cannot close the hearing regardless of what happens tonight, okay? The meeting will be open tonight, but it cannot close. There may be other issues, too, that will remain open. Sure. But if the only thing open was awaiting for a DEP file number, then regardless, we couldn't close the hearing.
My understanding.
Hold on, let me just finish calling it, okay? The project location is 50 Stedman Street, and it's expansion of an existing parking lot in the 100-foot buffer to an inland bank, being the Black Brook. Sir, if you could identify yourself for the record?
Yes, I am Kaneo Lala. I'm the civil engineer for BAPS. They're my client. And we presented this case in 2009, and when conservation approved it, and we prepared the parking and gravel surface. Now we have a request here to pave it with a porous pavement, so it still stay porous. So we will not be generating any new runoff, and that's why we don't have to prepare any BMPs, because it is a very gentle slope, and we left it the way it was. All we did is clear a few trees so that cars can be parked for the volunteers. This is excess parking, which is not actually required by the parking regulations, but we wanted to create some extra parking because we have several volunteers on big events, so we can do some double parking, and that was accepted, and we went ahead and prepared it. So the DEP probably thought that since it is the same address, same project, they did not give you a new number. They may be still carrying under the same file, and they must have just filed it that there's a revised information come to them or something like that. And that could be, it has happened to me in Billerica, because there we had 2-3 times submission to the,
We've issued a certificate of compliance on that prior project, though, have we not?
Yes, I checked that, and I can, I brought the file with
Yes.
me. If you give me one moment, I can check that.
Yeah, okay. Once the certificate of compliance is issued, that's a closed file,
I understand.
so a new
Yes.
DEP number would
We
be
do, but
necessitated.
that could have been the reason why they haven't issued, because that has happened to me before.
I can actually provide a little clarification on that. I touched base with DEP about that today, and it looks as though they have cashed the check, but not provided a file number,
The money,
which
no accounting for.
which indicates that there was an issue, as they have multiple offices, and one office, I guess, generates the file number, one processes the payment, and so
Some coordination problem.
yeah, I believe that the file was sent to the incorrect office. That they indicated that they do have it in their system, that they're processing it, and there will be a DEP file number issued.
Okay. So let me explain to you the. Yeah, this is okay, I'll stand here. This is the new sheet I added to our submittal. We had one sheet which was showing existing conditions as well as the new condition. Basically, from grading point of view, we're not doing anything. It is exactly the same. Even that 2009, all the grading we had changed was about 3 inches.
Do we have this,
Yes.
what you're showing us?
Yes, this has been submitted to you, and what I did, this is a new sheet which I'm gonna provide you today. All I did is remove the parking which we prepared. See this dark black.
All right, if you're explaining from a new sheet, can you supply those to us
Yes,
first?
we will
Thank you.
supply to you. I have extra sheets.
Say that again?
I have some extra sheets, I will supply those.
Can you do that while you're explaining it?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have labeled this sheet as.
Hold on. let us get a chance to look at this.
So I have labeled this sheet as S2, and it is dated April 26 on the revision date. And what I did is took away this other viewport here, which was very old topo. I didn't realize the topo I gave you on S1 as existing was 1959 topo, when the buildings were not built. So that was the confusion I created. So you could now ignore it and just go with this S2. S2 is the existing conditions. So in existing conditions, you can see the big building here, hashed, and then you have the whole one length of the parking. That is the age of paving. And then you can see this bold line, which is the limit of work, where we will be, we actually worked under and created the new parking. And the blue line here I'm showing is the 100-year floodplain. Now, I did update this from the new FEMA. When we did originally this one, we had done at that time the FEMA plan. The FEMA revised it in June of 2010, but the level did not change. It was still the same between the grades 106 and 107. So that is what the line is. And I had a small error in graphics that this line, as you can see here, this line differs from what you had submitted from me before, because I did not read my spot level of 108 and I ran this line straight. So that was incorrect. So I corrected it, and this is more accurate representation of 100-year. So this is to explain, see the bold line black here and this highlighted blue line, which is shown highlighted the dark dotted line. That's a 100-year floodplain. Those are the two dark lines. And we are way away from the 100-year. We're not doing any work in 100-year floodplain. So that was one issue I was asked to explain in the comments I received from Greg. And the second is the FEMA map also shows a 500-year zone. What they call here is 0.2% annual floodplain, which is they changed the language. They used to call 100-year and 500-year. Now they changed it to 1% and 0.2%. So that is what they mean, that flood zone is 500, and that flood zone does touch the building line, but we don't have to do anything about it because we only do flood calculations for 100-year floodplain.
Correct. We're, for the purposes of tonight's discussion, we only care about the 1%.
Right. So 1% is that what is the line we have drawn. So that line is about 20 feet away at the closest from our work limit of work. And the new work, what we are doing now is, if you can see your other drawing, which is exactly the same, which you already have, that if you refer to your previous drawing, that we have this new parking line shown behind the existing, that you can see the one we have submitted to you, the S1 drawing, which we have submitted to you, the old one. So I'm just showing you the work because that's not changed. All I changed in this new submittal is the 100-year line.
All right, I'm going to make a comment here because, I mean, I'm just going to interrupt you for a few seconds.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you to stick to one plan, because the original plan, that one that you're showing now, when I looked at it, there's so many problems with it, because we've got the 100-year floodplain actually crossing contours in multiple locations, and the floodplain doesn't do that, okay? It's physically impossible for it to do that. Also, the scale typically that we receive is 1 to 20, and this is 1 to 30.
Right.
This is a very, very difficult plan to read.
If you have any question, I can explain.
But I don't want you to go back to the one you had submitted that we have in our package, simply because there's way too many, when I looked at it, I've got, for instance, I've got the 100-year floodplain crossing the 108 contour in 4 separate locations.
That is what I corrected.
Right, no, I know that's what you just explained. It still crosses in the new one, which is not okay. That's gonna have to be addressed and corrected.
Because of the boulders and the slopes.
Okay, but it can't cross a contour, though.
It is not crossing, it is just very close. It's not crossing.
Well, it shows it on the plan.
It's,
Yeah, right at,
it's difficult to read, but intention is to keep it between 108 and 106. 106 and 108, they come so close because of the boulders. They are like within a foot from each other. And you know what is 1 foot on 30th scale? Would be 1/30th of an inch.
okay, but perhaps if your plan had a better resolution, was a
Okay.
little bit expanded, it would show that.
Okay.
Let me just go on. I'm gonna ask you to stick to the plan either you just
Sure.
submitted or the one you've previously submitted. I don't wanna go back and
No,
forth.
no, no, that's why I
because it's-
brought you the new revised
be-
one for S1 too.
Because
Greg, if you can.
both of these plans are very confusing. It's almost to the point where, at least I'm going to request later on in the hearing that you break this down and
Blow it up.
you submit more than one plan.
Blow it up into 2 sheets and give you 120 scale.
Well, it may be an existing condition and a proposed, because there's just too much going on in this plan to follow, okay? We're not the engineers, we're looking at it from your drawings. You understand it because you put it together.
Yes.
But I've looked at thousands of these
You think
over
that-
the year, and I'm having trouble with this one.
Okay, but do
Okay.
you think it is relevant to where we are working?
Say
Is
again?
that 100-year line relevant to where we are working?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It can't cross a contour, and
But we're not working at 108, 109,
yeah, but
110, we're working at 112.
I don't know that yet, okay?
Okay, that's what I want to explain.
Okay, all right.
So if
Why-
Greg,
but
can you
I'm-
give them those sheets?
Kindly stick to either to one plan or the other. Don't bounce back and forth in between
No,
two.
no, no, no. What I did, I issued, on the request of Greg, issued 2 sheets. I gave you S2, which is existing conditions.
Yeah.
And this is the new one, which is proposed. Yeah. So this one replaces the S1 we submitted. So you can discard the one we
Right,
submitted
so
and we can follow this.
the one dated July 2nd, 2000, or March,
Right,
revised March 31st, 2011?
yes,
right.
that you can discard, and this is April 26.
Do we have sufficient copies for,
Right now, I brought 4 sets.
okay, you're required to bring 9.
We'll bring you extra tomorrow.
There's 7 commissioners and
Sure.
2 for the file.
We'll submit as many you need. So to explain where our proposed work is, if we move to where the existing parking is, all we did is regraded 20 feet strip parallel to existing parking. And we removed few trees and debris and few bushes so that the cars can easily park. And we left the same gravel, whatever gravel was there over there. We may have brought few yards of a stone to just smoothen it up. But the grading was within 3 inches to a foot. As you can see, there are certain corners of that parking on the left side, which are going to 112 contour. And most of our parking is between 114 and 115. The 114 contour runs through the parking. So all our work was within 112 and 114. And 100-year floodplain is 107. So we are 5 feet above the 100-year floodplain. And that's why in the previous approval, they accepted the same drawing, they had accepted it.
Um, Do you want, how much, first of all, let's get a direction on this plan. North is, I'm assuming, north would be pointing towards the lower left-hand corner?
Yeah, see, this locust plan will tell you the north. Yeah, so north is this way. The building is basically north-south. The building is north-south.
North being towards the bottom?
Yes, yes, this is north.
All right, now in the southern corner of the lot, how much additional, are you expanding over your existing paved line?
We're not,
Or, I know you're not paved now, but how further closer to the wetland resource are you going?
you can see the second row of parking. That second row of parking, that's all we're going to be paving. 18 feet wide strip, parallel to the existing parking edge.
All right.
We have 2 rows of parking now, back to back. So the second row of parking is what we have in gravel right now, and we want to put porous concrete.
Okay, what I'd like to do tonight is kind of, since we can't close the hearing, and since we're looking at this new plan, or 2 new plans essentially for the first time, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask the commission, and I'm gonna open it up at some point, but I'm gonna ask the commission just for some comments, some initial comments to see, if we can flesh out some areas of concern.
Please do so that I can answer those.
Right, and I for one would like to see these maps cleaned up a little bit. Plus, we need sufficient copies for everyone, because we go out to the,
You need
the
it now?
site,
Should I go and make some copies now and bring it in half an hour?
Oh, yeah, you can do that after the hearing, but
Okay.
you don't need to do that tonight, because we're not going to finish tonight anyway. And I'd just like to touch on some major points or concerns that the commission may have without, binding us to making further changes. There may be some more substantial things that we're concerned about that we're just not seeing tonight looking at this, okay? Because I'll tell you, the plan I was working off of, I just had problems with the plan. Now, some of those seem to be addressed by this, but I still have some issues, okay?
Sure.
One, I have to make the comment, it's difficult to understand because and maybe Commissioner Mellon could explain this more, but typically when we see a proposed site in an existing site, the contours for the existing site are typically dashed, is that correct? And the contours for a proposed are typically solid, and you're mixing them. You've got your 110, for some reason you show it as a solid profile line.
Yeah, because every 5 and 10 are the solid.
Yeah, I know, but you don't want to, we don't care about that.
Okay, so that is our practice.
Yeah, you want to be consistent.
Yeah,
okay,
so.
because it makes it very difficult to read this plan.
Right, but we have only one contour, which is proposed contour.
Okay, well,
That
you
can see, which is the 114 contour.
okay. But
So you can see that is in solid.
All right.
And it joins the 114 dash contour, and it crosses over to 112. So that's where the 2-foot fill was.
Okay, but let's keep it consistent though. So that's
You want
that's,
me to
yeah,
put
that's-
a different type
that-
of line, we'll
yeah,
do that.
That's one issue for me that needs to be addressed. Okay. The second thing is you're showing 2-foot elevations here. Would like to see 1-foot elevations.
We can do 6-inch elevation.
You're going to have to do some bank regrading, and you are in
It will be
close-
just more crowded drawing with
Yeah,
more lines.
well, and you're also in on the southern corner, you're in very close proximity to the 100-year floodplain.
Which side?
On the southern corner. That's the upper, yeah.
Over here?
You're right.
Yeah,
I mean, per your map,
But that is where the steep slope is.
I mean, you're within 30 feet.
Yeah, but we are 5 feet above the floodplain.
Well, I understand that, but you have
It's a
no,
one-in-one slope.
but you have no contour markings in between that, so we have no idea what it is, okay?
We have 108, we have 110, and we have
Yeah,
112.
but
We have all the three contours.
And would like to see a 1 foot,
So I will draw just a parallel line. I'm not going to go and shoot another grade for it.
no, it's,
I can draw that right now on your drawing, whereas
I'm
109 will be and 111 would be.
did you shoot the grades for 2 feet?
Yes, the spot grades.
Okay.
Spot grades are there, which are very clearly marked, and that's how we had to do that.
You are modifying the bank, you have to, because you're expanding the parking. So you have to show a slope, and we need to know what that is, okay? Anytime you change the slope, you're in very close proximity to a bordering vegetated wetland, you're in very close proximity to the Black Brook, and you're also in very close proximity to a 100-year floodplain. And anytime you do that, we need to see what your slopes are going to be, what you're going to use to stabilize those slopes, what you're going to do to control and contain runoff along those slopes. We need to see that, and we're not getting any of that on these plans, okay? And those are critical for this notice of intent. And we don't have any of that information. What I'm saying is typically in a situation like that, we're going to get 1 foot contours.
Several acres, big lots we do. It's not for just 50
And-
parking spaces.
And unfortunately, your characterization that you're just gonna draw parallel lines doesn't cut it. You may have to reshoot your 1 foots. So,
It's all boulders.
say again?
It boulders. They jump from here to there by a foot in 2 inches. They're boulders. We could walk the side together if you want. It's all rocky.
Okay.
There is nothing to worry about the erosion because there is nothing to erode.
The other issue that's of importance for me is, again, towards the southern end of the parking lot, you've got the 100-year floodplain crossing the 108 contour. And floodplains don't cross contours. They don't do it. They follow a contour. The only time they cross a contour is at a dam or a culvert. They just don't cross contours, and you're showing it crossing a contour. So you have to account for that. If the slope is uneven, then you've got to show it. Or you've got to either adjust the elevation or adjust the 100, where you're showing the 100-foot floodplain. But you can't cross it, okay? It just doesn't make any sense.
Is that accuracy is relevant in this project?
Yeah, it is relevant in this project because you're going to have to adjust the slope.
Is it going into my work area? That is my question.
Well, I don't know. You're going to have to adjust the slope in that area. You're in very close proximity to the floodplain in that area. If you can show us that you're not going to be impacting that area at all, that's fine, but you haven't shown us that yet.
We'll have to draw to 1 to 10 scale certain areas and give you blow-ups.
I mean, you're extending your parking area, it looks like a good 30 feet.
No, 18 feet.
At 18 feet?
Yes.
All right, well, so you're going to have to change the slope. You're crossing
Crossing what?
You're crossing the 114, the 112, and you're coming up to the 110. So you've got a 4-foot elevation change there that you're going to have to be filling.
It's already done.
What do you mean it's already done?
It has been done in 2009. That was approved. It is approved.
But you're extending your parking, though.
That is what we did in 2009.
Extension was done already.
All we are asking 3 inches of asphalt paving.
You're not extending beyond what you've already put gravel on?
No, that is what is proposed.
But you're going to be putting pavement in place on top of what exists there now.
Exactly.
All right, then that's my error, then I didn't understand that. But, all right.
All we are asking 3 inches of asphalt, porous asphalt concrete to
On
be
top
placed.
of the existing
On
footprint.
existing 3 inches, the gravel will be removed and will replace.
Then that's my error. What, all right,
It's already been done, everything is complete.
all right. That's my error then. All right, what threw me, I guess, was then showing the old parking then. All right. So I'm going to shut up now then, and Commissioner Chalupka?
Okay, I just have two questions. So the comments from Craig indicate that the gravel parking area on the southern end that we were just talking about was not approved. Is that what you are implying here? This is not part of the original notice of intent from 2009?
Because of the age of some of the site work out there, it's a little difficult to tell what was done at what time, but I agree that the portion that's under consideration tonight to turn from gravel to asphalt was approved under an order of conditions in 2009, then subsequently received a certificate of compliance.
But the part at the very end near the snow storage, which is not proposed to be paved,
Yes,
was not in the
that
original?
that was not a part of the proposed expansion in 2009. I cannot speak to when exactly it was built, and it's not proposed to be paved as a part of this submission.
Is it paved or is it gravel?
Right now, it's, my site visit indicated it's either gravel or compacted dirt.
Okay, and one more question. Why can't the volunteers park on the gravel?
What happens that in the winter time, it's very hard to remove the snow over the gravel because it removes the gravel. It's very hard to maintain gravel. That is the only reason we want it. Originally, I had told my organization that let us stick with the gravel that is natural, environmentally sound, and that's how we got approval. But they went through one whole winter, actually 2 winters, 10 and now 11, and they find that it is very hard to maintain. And since there is a good product available, which is as good as gravel, but it gives us a hard surface to plow. That's the reason we came forward. Otherwise, we can withdraw this project, and we are fine.
So do you have some numbers about the amount of flood storage that would change or anything
No,
like that?
flood storage will not change at all because this porous concrete, it has been used 3 places in Lowell, and it just, water goes through, and it goes with the same percolation rate as the underlying soil. The layer of asphalt, that's completely porous. It lets all water go through. So whatever runoff is there is what is now without asphalt. So there's no change at all. And that's the reason, because we didn't want it to get into BMPs and catch basins and detention ponds. That's why we wanted to stay away from any impervious surface. So if you allow us asphalt concrete, it's fine. Otherwise, we just withdraw. Because our work has already been done.
Commissioner Vanham?
Do you intend to have some kind of a berm or a curb along the back at the edge of pavement?
There is no berm because it gradually goes downhill, and there is no usable space at all because it's all rocky and very steep slope. So there will be no berm, no.
I'm interested in the drainage. Will it be sheet flow off of the pavement?
There's a sheet flow off of the existing asphalt pavement, which is partially goes to the brook and partially goes to the catch basin shown there. There's one catch basin which is existing. I don't know when that was put in. We moved into this building about 10 years ago, right? And this was there before that. When I did the original plans to convert this industrial building to temple, this was already there. So we have not built any new drainage. We have not paved anything. It all came with the building. So who knows when it was done. I have not gone to the history, but I think somewhere in 1958 and 62, during that time, it was built.
Are you saying that the water will infiltrate the porous pavement before it flows off the back?
Yes. There will be about 30% runoff, which is also from the gravel. When the gravel saturates, then there will be some runoff. Even the grass has runoff. Grass does not saturate take away all the rain comes. When we get the 100-year, forget the 100-year, normal 2-year rain, we get 4.5 inches of rain in 24 hours. And 60% of it comes in 1 hour. That's the way the hydrograph curve is. And after that big rainfall, what is tapers off, you see, from heavy pour to drizzle in next 10 hours, that is always a runoff because ground is now saturated and it is running surface run and it is going into the brook. It is going now and it will keep going that way.
So just beyond the edge of pavement, you intend to have a grassed area or just
It
gravel?
is all gravel. We cannot grow grass there. It's all gravel. It's very rocky, so nothing can be grown there. Some bushes are there in pockets of rocks. All the BVW, as you go close to the brook, you have all those wetland vegetations. Otherwise, there's nothing else. There were some trees, of course, big trees and we removed those 6-7 trees in that 18-foot strip so that the cars can be parked.
Keeping an eye on that through several storms.
Yes, we are. I mean, we maintain that area very clean. We don't let any debris go there into the pond because we're very careful about environmental nature because we go and do a lot of religious services in front of the trees and we keep that whole area very, very clean. We have volunteers who remove all the debris from there practically after every event, every week.
Commissioner Mellon?
Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to visit this site, but I intend to.
Please do come, please.
And I would like to see the north arrow on the
Oh,
drawing.
yes, I don't know how it got turned off, that layer maybe. I was playing with layers and it got turned off. It was there in the original drawing. I think the old drawing may still have it.
I concur with the chairman's previous comments about cleaning up the drawing, so it's more easily readable.
Sure. That's obvious.
But I will go out to the site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lynch?
When do you anticipate doing this paving if it's approved by the commission?
Right away, paving, these plants are probably opening this week. So it will be start as soon as the availability of a contractor and
And this is the only area you're
This
looking
is
to
it.
pave? Okay,
this is it.
okay. Thank you.
All right, I have a couple more questions and comments that I just wanted to focus on the map in particular in a generic fashion, just as an acceptable filing with us, but now I have some more substantive questions. Does this change, now, you're just paving an 18-foot, when you came in before, there was an existing paved driveway, parkway back, or parking lot back there, and you extended it out to include another, so you're double stacking cars, basically.
Stacking cars.
Right. And so now you want to put this porous paving over what you've expanded
Exactly.
already. Okay, now I understand that
Thank
part.
you.
Okay. Now, with respect to that, and what I want to get into is, are we required now, do we need a water quality certificate? And do we need the calculations here for runoff? Because Commissioner Varnum had requested, had requested whether or not this is going to change the runoff aspect, as the porous pavement is not as accepting of infiltration as, for instance, loose gravel would be, depending on the type of compaction that you have the gravel. And your comment back was, well, everything saturates at some point, and I agree. The question then becomes, if we have straight runoff now, under certain events, do we need the calculations now under the 1-year, 10-year, 100-year storm event?
I can send you a hydrology report. That's not a problem.
As to what?
You can see, there'll be only one report showing the same CN of the underlying soil. and underlying soils, say CN number is 38, and CN number 38 would carry, say, 30% surface runoff, that is what is going to show.
Can I, if I can, for one moment, that they did actually submit a full stormwater calculation with the proposal. I didn't provide it to the commission because I provided it to the city engineer for her comments. I just received those within the last 40 hours or so and haven't had a chance to circulate them to the applicant, so I didn't necessarily want to provide them to the commission.
Okay.
The substance of the comments that we can, that I will provide in full, both to the commission
All
and to
right,
the
let's
applicant.
provide those to the, since they haven't had a chance to see them, let's provide them to the applicant first. Let them, come back with their comments and questions and deal with the engineering department with that. Because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to start the process, start the questions, and then have the engineering department and the applicants perhaps take another tack.
Okay.
Okay. So let's, let those comments go back to the applicant and let them deal with that. And then when it comes back to us, since we have to come back anyway, we'll deal with it at that point in time. Yeah, I mean, this site begs for a 1-to-20 plan. I apologize because it's gonna create a little bit more work for you, but it does beg, you've got to change it. It's got to be more readable.
Very
Okay.
easy. Nowadays, the
Yeah.
CAD is the good thing. All to do is split into 2 sheets.
All right.
More
And
paperwork, more trees to be cut.
And perhaps you may even want to provide an exploded view of that southern corner, okay?
We can blow that
And a
up.
little bit, because it's not your closest point to the BVW, it's sort of mid-parking lot is
You're
your
away
closest
from
point.
25-feet buffer zone.
Right,
Not even in 25-feet buffer zone.
but you may want to provide a little bit more
We can
detail
blow
on
it
those
up to
close areas.
1-to-1 scale, sure.
The other thing I'd like to see you do is show your, I don't know what they call it, but a distance, a sight line from your closest point to the bordering vegetated wetland,
Okay.
okay? Where where your corners are, especially where that mid-level change in contour is. Are you have existing hay bales and remnants of hay bales out there now.
Yes, we
Those
do.
have to be removed and replaced
Well,
prior
as
to
soon as
this.
asphalt work is done, we'll remove it.
Yeah, well, that should be done before. The existing,
There will be some earthwork because they will have to come and remove the gravel, stockpile it. I think we should keep the hay bales till it's all done.
to the
Because some fines will run off.
you're gonna have to make it so it's effective.
Yes,
Okay,
we'll have to repair
right
it.
now, it's in very poor condition.
We will have to repair it.
And so, the other thing too is about mid-parking lot, you're showing this jog, but you're showing parking spots beyond that, what's that all about? Am I misreading your plan again? The heavy black dashed line is your limit of work?
Right, it just follows that, and this area here, because of the very, very rocky and steep slope, we cannot do any parking spots in this area.
Yeah, but you're showing parking spaces in there.
Yeah, but those were not built.
Then take them out,
Yes,
because if they're on the plan, that means you're gonna do them,
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
okay? So those have gotta go.
Yeah, those are not built. We don't have those there. Those which are going past the limit of line, those were eliminated.
Yeah, you can't show something if
Okay.
you're not gonna build it,
Sure, sure.
okay?
We'll-
Because I'm gonna assume that you're gonna do those, and
Yes, I will remove those.
we had an issue the last time where, I believe it was this one, where a corner, I think, again, it was your southern corner was off-site. Was that this particular project?
I have to admit, I wasn't around or briefed on
All
the
right, I
previous
need-
submission, so.
And in advance of the next project, can you submit the, Craig, can you include the prior as-built and original plan that was approved by the commission for the original gravel that was done?
Yes, I can provide that as a part of the next commission's
And-
packet.
Because this is, my recollection was that that the certificate of compliance process was delayed because that corner of the site, that corner of the work was off-site. And there was some reliance, or there was some contour changes back there that were off-site, and there was reliance on that, and what is the property bound, at least as far as that back southern, do you go back to the Black Brook?
Yes, and on the north side.
Yeah, I see the line over here.
On the north side, we are abutting the country club. And on the back side, on the east side, there are houses, the row of houses.
All right.
And one of the lots actually.
And that's on the other side of the Black Brook, though?
Yes,
Yeah.
the other side of the brook. Yeah, our property goes to the thread of the brook.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
All right, maybe it wasn't this project, maybe it was another one. My recollection was that it was this one,
Right.
but if you could include those, thank you. At this time, I don't have any more comments.
Very good.
All right,
Thank
what
you.
I'm going to do is I am going to open it up to see if anyone would like to offer their comments or concerns, with the understanding that this is going to be continued. Okay?
And next meeting will, before that, we'll tomorrow submit to you more clarified.
Okay.
drawing.
Is there anyone here who would like to offer their comments or concerns regarding this project? This is the 50 Stedman Street project. Chair notes that there's no one here to speak otherwise. Do I have are there any other comments or questions from the commission? Okay. Do I have a motion to continue at the request of the proponent, the applicant?
Motion to continue.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. That will be continued, assuming we have all the submittals. If you have these plans now, just bring them up and give them to Craig before we finish up tonight. Okay, and then he'll make sure that they either get to us tonight or in the next submittal package. Okay? All right, thank you. Moving on, request for certificate of compliance, Lou Baldumas, Rainbow Builders. Project location is 124 Dingwell Street. And this is regarding DEP file number 206-615. Is there anyone here to speak on that project?
The project engineer had indicated to me that he might not be able to make it tonight, but I do have copies of an updated site plan. If the commission saw in my comments there was at least one dimension that seemed to have been mislabeled, and I requested a few additional for the commission's review. So if you will, hold on one moment.
All right, and there was one other major concern, and that was the stone bounds, at least. I haven't had a chance to look at this yet, and I'm going to open it up, actually, but
I looked at the site and the stone bounds are in place.
all right, Commissioner Chalupka, do you have any comments? regarding this?
No.
All right, Commissioner Varnum?
I inspected the site today, and I think it's in good order. The hay bale and silt felt slide needs to be removed. But everything was very well stabilized and very neat.
Commissioner Mellon?
No comment.
Commissioner Lynch?
No comments.
All right, Craig, I'm assuming you've also viewed the site?
Yes.
All right, and your comments were, I have your memo, your comments were satisfied? I think the main one was the stone bounds, which I'm satisfied at least now that they're in place.
Yeah, my comments were really that dealt with some slight deviations from the approved plans. The only other one that I wanted to check on site was the grading behind the driveway. The as-built seemed to indicate it was slightly different than permitted, but it remained, the limit of work as to the grade change remained the same distance as proposed, and that the grade was actually slightly more gradual, which I thought was, in the end, a net benefit for the site.
All right, what's the pleasure of the board? I mean, this isn't an overly complicated site, so.
I move to issue a certificate of compliance on this project.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. You'll let Mr. Baldomas aware of that. Also, make the comments that the, pursuant to Commissioner Varnum's statements, that the siltation and hay bales need to be removed from the site.
I will let the representative know.
All right, and if they could follow up by email to you when that's been done, so that's kept tab. All right, abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, George Scaff Enterprise. We have a DEP file number on this, I believe.
Yes, 206-0673.
206-6...
0673.
673. Okay, thank you. Project location is 61 Bishop Street, and it's boundary delineation of a potential isolated wetland. If you could kindly identify yourself for the record.
Good evening. My name's Maureen Hanley from North Environmental Services. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Mr. George Scaff. He's here as well this evening. I have colored plans, if the commission would like to take those and take a look at them. They're the same as the plans on the board. I can pass those out to you.
Are these new from what we have in our submittal?
Nope, they are not new. They're just for your convenience.
I believe we already have them. Oh, if you have colored ones, that's fine.
So we filed a abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for this property. These are two isolated wetlands. This ANRAD was previously filed back in 2008, and it's in front of you again. We had filed it back in 2008 to verify the wetland boundaries. Prior to the close of the meeting, it was our understanding that the board agreed that these two wetlands were isolated. When the order was issued, it said that it was a bordering vegetated wetland. So when we came in front of the board in 2010 for the proposed work to be done, that became an issue. So we'd like to revisit the site and just reaffirm that these wetlands are isolated so that there's no question when we come back in front of the board for any proposed work that this is a solve the matter.
Okay, thanks. I believe we viewed the site the other day.
Correct.
Or at least some of us did, and we reviewed, we walked the site also, I believe, probably a year and a half ago. And between, and there was a prior, order on the site, and then your follow-up ANRAD, or resource delineation, that was approved by this commission. This is the 2010 ANRAD. Are there,
It was actually a 2008 ANRAD that was approved by the commission. In the meeting notes, Craig was kind enough to forward us a copy of that. And it states right in the meeting notes at the beginning, Steve Erickson from Norse Environmental had stated that these are 2 isolated wetlands. So when we walked away from that meeting, we were under the standing that the commission was on board with this, that this is an isolated wetland. Unfortunately, when the paperwork got issued, it got sent to our client, and it was the box for bordering vegetated wetland was checked. We believe it was just a clerical error at that time in 2008, and unfortunately, we didn't see the order. Otherwise, we would have appealed it or brought it back to the commission's attention.
no, I understand that, but we also, didn't we issue, or did,
No, what had happened is we filed a notice of intent for proposed work out on this property last fall.
correct?
And this became a big issue because some of the board members had felt that these wetlands weren't isolated, that they were in fact bordering, and we ended up withdrawing the notice of intent from both the city and the state.
Oh, so that was withdrawn?
That's correct.
Oh, all right, okay, all right. Then in my memory, at least of that, it's different, but in a way that's I guess agrees with your position. I'm probably the one that had the biggest disagreement with Mr. Erickson when he originally came in front of us. I felt that it was bordering, but then once we did the subsequent site walk, and this was 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago now. My mind changed, or I shouldn't say it changed, at least I was convinced at that point in time that it was not a bordering vegetated wetland. And that's borne out in the minutes. Now, it's apparently, I understand what you're saying, the original ANRAD, for some reason, came through with some error on it. And then when you filed the notice of intent, I recall myself having a fairly spirited discussion with Mr. Erickson regarding whether it was bordering or not, and that was before we did the site visit. And then once we did the site visit, I agreed with Mr. Erickson's characterization of the site. Now, with respect to the notice of intent that was filed 2 years ago or last year, the 2010 one, excuse me. I remember talking to you the other day, and I asked you if anything had changed, at least as far as what we're seeing on this present ANRAD, the 2011 ANRAD, and what was filed previously. And the comments were that the wetland flagging hadn't changed. You had just updated the flagging. That's all. So it was more clear. I'm satisfied, and I'm just going to say for me, I'm satisfied that it's isolated. I have one small disagreement as to the flagging, but it won't change the matter. And it's based on my own lay observations in the field. And even if we were to change the flagging, it wouldn't matter. Okay, it's not gonna change how the site would be perceived. It would probably only add 100 square feet, and as far as, even if we took both of these areas together, They still don't meet the definition of an isolated land subject to flooding. Separate, they're not even close. And they're not sufficient in and of themselves. I didn't see any evidence, at least in my observation, that they should even be considered as vernal pools.
Right.
They're just basically low areas that get wet right now. Classic definition of an isolated land subject to flooding, but it's, you know, one, they're artificial areas,
Right.
because they were created by a cut and what's out there that otherwise wouldn't have existed but for the cut, for the road extension that was done perhaps 40, 50 years ago, based on the age of the trees that are in there alone. They're probably under a little bit of an accelerated growth because of the soils that are out there, but some of the trees in there are fairly sizable. So I agree with the wetland flagging. I think actually, to some extent, at least as far as the B flaggings go, and that's along the roadway or Bishop Street roadway, I think you were more conservative than I would have even flagged that. And you had demonstrated that you did those determinations on the soil more than on species at that point in time. Obviously, we're not looking at soils as much as you would be. I appreciate you showing that to us. I don't have any disagreement with your flaggings, as I said, other than just in the A area between wetland flag 13, 12, and 11. I would have drawn a straight line across from 11 to 13, but even that doesn't significantly change matters. The wetland flagging sort of follows a rock wall.
Right.
That's out there, but next to that 36-inch oak tree that you have spotted, there's two very sizable boulders that sort of define a break in the wall, and to me, it felt like there was a depression and sufficient hydric soils, and there was some fiddlehead ferns and whatnot that were on the other side of those flaggings. But even taking that and adding that triangle, to me, isn't sufficient to change the request for the ANRAD, and it's not going to change whether or not it's a jurisdictional wetland or not.
Okay.
So I, for one, and I'm going to open it up to the other board members. I, for one, agree with the flagging. There is no, to me at least, there was no hydrological connection. What is when you're proposing the project, will there be an NOI filed?
Absolutely.
All right. And the reason I ask that is because there are other structures in close proximity, especially along the Commercial Street corridor, that are potential concerns. They're off-site, so.
Well, technically, if there's an NOI filed, the city doesn't have any jurisdiction. So would it be something that we could notify the city and the commission of the plans that we want to do? Because we had previously filed a notice of intent last year, and then we ran into the trouble with this wetland issue. And really that was just to inform the city and the neighbors, this is what the works that's going on out there. And unfortunately, again, we ran into these wetland issues, so we'd like to, we'll notify the board.
Well, what I'm getting at is, I agree that your characterizations of the wetland or the flaggings for the area B and the flaggings for the area A, I agree with the characterizations there. I agree that both of them, and I think we agreed with the original NOI filing that neither one of them were jurisdictional wetlands. And I also...
That wasn't my recall at the time. At the time when the notice of intent was filed, what I remember is that this was the issue, that some of the members believed that it was bordering, and some of the members I don't know if they thought it was isolated or not, but that's why we never finished the notice of intent process at that time.
All right. What I'm getting at is there's, along the Commercial Street corridor, that runs along the railroad tracks.
Right.
There's a gradual slope of that corridor back down towards the ponding area and back down towards the Trollbrook watershed. And I understand that the cul-de-sac, the circle to the cul-de-sac is going to be back in that area. I haven't, this is just based on the previous plans, and obviously you're not bound by those because they were never approved and they were withdrawn and whatnot. But to me, there was at least there's some concern that even though it's not on your site, there's some potential, or there may be some potential impacts.
I agree wholeheartedly. The only concern that I have is for my client, because if we're in agreement that these are isolated wetlands, technically they're not under the city of Lowell's jurisdiction. And, you know, I'm back at square one where I feel like I was back in 2008 and this was under an agreement. And out of courtesy of the board, we went in front of you with a notice of intent. And this issue came up and we spent the money and the time and the effort to come in front of the board, when technically it's not under conservation's jurisdiction. So rather than going through that entire process again, what I'd like to do is, you know, submit the paperwork to the board so that you're fully aware of everything that's going on. You know, technically he'll need to put up erosion controls anyhow, regardless of the work that's out there to contain any type of erosion on site anyhow. But in terms of financial costs to my client, I'm just concerned regarding that.
Okay, but what I'm getting at though is, from what, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I've been known to be wrong a lot. You just were listening to the prior hearing where I was talking about something completely different. But correct me if I'm wrong, but the cul-de-sac area extends beyond the current property boundary of what Mr. Scaff owns out there. Is that correct, or is that not correct?
No.
No?
George.
Yeah, no, kindly, and identify yourself for the record, please.
George Scaff, 503 Fletcher Street, Lowell. Technically, no. Everything is within my property, because commercial street or road is an abandoned road by the city, and the abutter is allowed to the center line of the road, and the abutter on the other side is allowed to the center line. So that's, if you will, my end.
Okay, so I'm assuming then that the extension of Berkeley Avenue
Of Berkeley, yes.
is going to be accepted by the city of Lowell?
It's in front of the city council.
Okay, now,
The extension is in the planning board, you mean?
no, well, just Berkeley Avenue, the plan we saw before had 3 new house
Right,
lots.
exactly.
Okay, and again, I haven't seen anything in front of the planning board, that's not our issue. But you're going to extend, or you're going to, I mean, Berkeley Avenue already extends down there, but it's overgrown and it's,
right.
you know, it's already been cut. It's just, you know, it was done, I don't know how many years ago, a long time ago, but it's definitely there. You can see it. You're going to pave it.
Exactly.
Okay, now, on the ANRAD map that you submitted that's in front of us today, your southern property bound abuts the current Paper Street, Commercial Street.
Right.
That's going to extend, I'm assuming, another 20 feet into the center of
Center line of commercial, exactly.
Commercial Street. And I'm assuming
Yes, because
it's a 50-foot, so another 25 foot.
5 foot, yes.
Okay. What I'm getting at, though, is where is the cul-de-sac in relation to that southeastern corner of the property?
Without the other plan, it does go into the part of commercial, halfway through Commercial
Right.
Street Road, and it comes down, if you will, almost to that 18-inch oak tree.
Okay, which oak tree?
The 18-inch on the right,
The westerly side.
westerly side, sorry.
To the left of 12A, there's a twin 18-inch.
Yeah, okay, the twin 18-inch oaks?
Comes down, not that far, but it does come down towards that, there.
Okay, where would you say approximately the center of the cul-de-sac is?
It would have to be.
What I'm trying to get at is from my recollection of and I'm assuming that what you're gonna do is somewhat similar to the prior notice of intent that was filed last year. Okay, and I guess what I'm getting at is we, as a board, the Conservation Commission, we're not only concerned with what's on your property, but we're also concerned with what's not on your property. We can't just draw artificial lines and say, okay, that's our cutoff point, and we're not gonna concern ourselves.
Sure.
What I'm getting at is further down Commercial Street, there's more wetlands, and they're not part of this ANRAD, which is okay. But
Okay.
we don't know where you're stopping. We don't know what your limit of work is. And if Berkeley Ave is extended down into that area, then you've got potential jurisdictional areas for the Conservation Commission. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, that doesn't impact the INRAD here today. I mean, we can deal with the INRAD, but what I'm getting at is that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have to file a notice of intent. Just because we say, assuming we agree with you that neither one of these areas are jurisdictional, it could be that your area of work, especially in that southern portion, comes close enough to other wetlands that are along Commercial Street that then it becomes
I
jurisdictional.
understand.
Okay?
If I may, the road shows 45 feet here, okay? The planning board narrowed it to 20 feet, and it stays on the city of Lowell side. So if you go 20 feet from the top down, if you will, the cul-de-sac doesn't even come close to the wetlands that are there.
Okay, I'm just.
From memory.
Okay, I'm not.
The road was never
I'm
narrowed.
not going to hold you to that.
Nope.
But in the same token, you know, your wetland scientist is here with you tonight, and I know you don't have your engineers here tonight, and I know, you know, as with anything, economics and money are a critical factor. What I just want you to understand, and what I want to convey back is, assuming and even if we agree tonight with this ANRAD proposal, that doesn't mean, and that doesn't obviate automatically that a notice of intent would be or may not be required, okay? It still could be required, okay? I'm not saying it will be, I'm just saying it could be, because we don't have
Absolutely.
any
If we
construction
do any
plans.
work within your jurisdiction, we know within 100 feet, we need to come back in front of the board.
Right, okay.
I
just
understand that
wanna-
100%.
You know, I had asked you out in the field about, you know, the wetlands further down on Commercial Street, because they're in very close proximity. I know they're off-site, but they're in very close proximity, and I don't know where you're working, and we haven't seen any plans as far as that go, but just, you know the boundaries, you know the buffer zones, and as we get further down,
Right.
I'm, that you haven't requested of us to characterize those as either jurisdictional or not. I didn't walk that particular area. I'm just doing this from memory, and I'm doing it from topo maps, but the further down Commercial Street you go, the more, you know, the more carefully we have to review any work that gets, you know, that comes down there, okay?
I understand.
Okay. I have no further questions. Commissioner Chalupka?
No questions.
Commissioner Varnum?
No questions.
Commissioner Mellon?
No questions.
And Commissioner Lynch?
No questions.
All right. I appreciate you spending the time with us the other day with respect to walking the site and explaining
Well, thank you for your time and coming out.
explaining the methodology. I appreciate that. It's always interesting to get out in the field with people who have those particular expertises. And no ticks, so.
That's good. That's a plus.
I'm going to open it up. Is there anyone here who would like to offer their comments or concerns with respect to this ANRAD proposal? Kindly identify yourself for the record, please, sir.
My name is David Porter. I live at 76 Dayton Street. I live on the other side of the train tracks. I wanted to speak in opposition to this proposed subdivision. I am concerned about the rainwater runoff and the direction in which it will travel. The swamp at the end of Dayton Street fills up and causes flooding in my backyard. The stormwater runoff is allowed to flow off the proposed Berkeley Avenue extension. I am afraid this will cause additional groundwater in the swamp. I do not want this to then cause flooding in my house. I've spent my life savings to purchase my home and do not want to have it flooded due to this subdivision. I do not agree that this project protects the wetlands, wildlife, and assists in controlling flooding. The Wetlands Protection Program is in place to protect wetlands and land subject to flooding in a 100-year floodplain such as mine. I also believe this project will not protect the wildlife in the cutting of trees and changing the soil structure. I believe this subdivision will alter the wildlife habitat and habitat functions, breeding areas, food and nesting sites. The project will significantly reduce the area's capacity to support wildlife. We have seen deer, foxes, groundhogs, beavers, hawks, crawfish, and a large snapping turtle living in the woods. And that's all. And I have pictures concerning my site, well, at the end of my street and of the other side of the tracks, if the board would be interested in seeing them.
Absolutely. Now, you're on the, across the tracks?
Yes, sir.
Now, are you the corner lot that abuts the ponding area?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, if give the pictures to Craig. You have to understand you won't get those back. You won't get those back. Just hold on for a second, sir. The ponding that's down there, down below your property at the end of Dayton Street, do you know, where are the culverts that go under the track? Do you know?
I don't know.
Because I know they're not further up. I mean, and I've never been able to find them. I'm assuming that there's some culverts that connect that ponding area to to the Troll Brook. Do you know if those are connected at all at any point in time?
I don't know. We've only lived there for about 8 years. The only thing I saw is when I went on the Mass DEP website, showed a line underneath the tracks, but I didn't see one, a culvert going underneath the tracks.
How far up? I have to confess that the other day I didn't look at the other side. I know some of the members did. But I was a little, in one of your pictures, you show a wet area that runs up along the tracks. It looks like it goes right up into your yard. How far up does that come from the ponding area?
The one along the back, the one along the
That
back,
runs parallel to the tracks.
that runs through my yard and into my neighbor's yard.
Where does that start from? I mean, is that, I mean, it almost looks like a stream going through there.
It just starts with the amount of water in at the end of Dayton Street. When we get enough rain or enough water, it just comes up and comes into my yard. One of the pictures shows my yard, and the water does then start coming in towards my back door.
Right, I mean, is that runs down into the ponding area, or?
Yes, as it starts to recede a little bit, it does start to go down towards. I haven't walked into my neighbor's yard to see what they have, but it does start to go down. But for the most part of the year, there is water back there.
A question to Commissioner Mellon. I know you went over the other side of the tracks. Was there water on the other side of the tracks?
I didn't go over the other side.
Oh, who did? Oh, you. Oh, all right, you didn't go over there.
There is water,
All right, okay,
but I could see.
all right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Obviously, this is a very valid concern, any type of flooding issues in a neighborhood, and I understand you don't want any additional flooding to your home, that more than what you already have at this moment. But right now, as you know, what's in front of you is just a determination of resource areas. Now I'm made fully aware of perhaps a wetland on the other side of the tracks that we can look at in the future to see if that is within the jurisdiction of Lowell, and if it is, would be back in front of you.
Okay, yeah, I mean, well, that's definitely in Lowell. It's just a,
Well, I mean, within the Lowell Conservation.
Right,
If it's
right.
bordering or not. I mean, obviously, if it is, and we're doing any work within 100 feet, we'll be back in front of you.
yeah, I mean, there's one picture in there that I saw that's rather compelling. Let me, that's the one, yeah. It's the top left one on the, it's showing, it's labeled My Backyard at 76 Dayton Street. It's the top left picture. And it I mean, for lack of a better term, looks like a little brook running along the side of the tracks through his backyard. So, and if that's the area that's on the immediate side of the tracks, I mean, that's a, yeah, if you could, yeah, no, absolutely. That's why I'm passing them back. That's why I wanted to identify it. And again, this isn't anything we're going to determine tonight.
Right.
We're just here for the ANRAD for these particular, these particular resource areas. I appreciate you coming in. If I can characterize what we're doing here tonight, it's sort of it's a very technical and narrow issue. The applicant has requested an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation on their site and near their site. The purpose of that is there's, and typically, I don't want to speak for the applicant, but typically when they look at a site and they see wet areas, there's a concern. And the concern is that they're potentially a jurisdictional area. And what they do is they come before us and say, are these jurisdictional or not? And to get a determination. If they're jurisdictional, then they have to deal with them. They have to do particular things. If they're not jurisdictional, then they're free to make alterations as far as they don't have to, for instance, consider them in the same manner as if they were jurisdictional. Now, there's other issues that may be relevant, and that deals with runoff and stormwater management, runoff from the site. They can't increase that. Now, you've come in here tonight, you've opened our eyes, and I appreciate that. I wish more citizens of the city would do that. What you've done is very unusual, and I appreciate you coming in, and I doubly appreciate you coming in because I was completely unaware of that particular area on the other side of the tracks. What we're doing here tonight doesn't change anything. It doesn't say that we're not concerned with that. At some point in time, if and when this project goes forward, the engineers, the wetland scientists are going to have to look at the broader picture out there. And if their limit of work is within certain areas, within certain distances to areas, then they're required to file a notice of intent, and they're required to get approval in front of this commission for any work or changes or alterations that they intend to do. Not even on their site, but off their site. They just have to be within certain areas, okay? It doesn't just deal with that. What they're coming before us here tonight is they've got two areas that are of concern. And the concerns were, one, whether or not they're jurisdictional wetlands. What had happened a number of years ago was there was an ANRAD, something very similar to this filed, and for some reason or another, a checkbox was checked that the applicant indicates shouldn't have been checked. The other sub-issue, well, I shouldn't say sub-issue, but the other issue and concern was whether or not these two areas, since they have standing water in them now, and that's the requirement. If there's standing water, then they're potential isolated lands subject to flooding. You've been here all night, so you've heard discussions of other floodplains. They're a little bit different. I mean, an isolated land subject to flooding is treated like a floodplain, and it's also treated like a wetland. It's kind of has a characterization of both, but it doesn't have a buffer zone. And when there's an alteration to it, not only is there replication, but they also have to provide compensation. Whereas a regular floodplain, they don't. They just have to provide compensation at similar levels. Regular wetlands, there's stuff. So an isolated land subject to flooding kind of has characteristics of both a wetland and a flooding area. So they're dealt with a little bit differently. The standard is that it's got to be, the area has to pond or flood to what they say a 1/4 acre foot. And what that means is you take a foot of water over a 1/4 of an acre, and I don't know what that works out to be, but 11,000, 10,700 cubic feet or something like that of water. It's a pretty considerable amount of water, but this isn't it. Okay, the measurements that we received on this, both of them, they can consider them separately, but both of them together are well under that limit. So they're not, at least as far as I'm concerned, I'm satisfied that the calculations provided are accurate based on what I observed out there. The A area wasn't very deep at all. The B area gets a little deep in the middle, but it's a largely artificial area. The commercial street's a much older cut than the Berkeley street area. At least it seems to me to be a much older cut just based on the age of the trees that are present in it. I mean, do you have any further questions? Okay. I mean, obviously you're welcome to stay. And this, again, what we do here tonight, assuming we agree with the applicant, doesn't change the fact that they are going to have to look at those areas on the other side of the track and account for those and do some calculations and measurements. And if their limit of work is within is within certain areas, and if there's a characterization that those are potentially bordering vegetated wetland. Now, it's wet, it comes up, that could be, you know, if that's an intermittent stream, I don't know. Is it a perennial stream? I don't know. Is it just a drainage ditch that's carved its way through? I don't know. I don't know what it is, okay? Because, to be honest, I didn't go over there, so I didn't look at it. But what I do know, and at least from what you've shown in your pictures, is that area definitely has a hydrologic connection to the lower Trollbrook watershed and that ponding area, and those areas are definitely jurisdictional. So we could assume, but I don't want to do that tonight, we could assume that those are potential jurisdictional areas now on the other side of the tract, and I think the applicant is aware of that. So what, I guess what I'm getting at is the long and the short of it is an NOI may be required, okay? But this is, what we're doing tonight is just a very fine procedural point. It allows the applicant to take a look at the area and to make their design based on what we determine tonight, and they can work around certain features or they can ignore features, okay, in building out their project. Now, if their limit of work takes them into other jurisdictional areas, then they have to deal with those at that point in time. But right now, what we're, you know, again, what we have here is what we're dealing with, okay? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any other comments, questions or concerns? All right, the chair notes that was it. Are there any other questions or concerns from the commission? All right, no. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing? All right, do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. All right, before us is a abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, or an ANRAD. At this point in time, what we can do is, I believe, what we do is we either agree with it or we do not agree with it. We're not issuing an order, we're just agreeing with the resource delineation, or we're not agreeing with the resource delineation based on our observations, based on the hearings. Again, several of us walked the site. I've walked it several times, and I'm somewhat familiar with the site just from its proximity to other projects that have been out there, have taken us in that general location several times over the number of years. So I, for one, am satisfied with the flaggings that are out there, and would agree at this point in time that the delineations submitted in the plan are representative of what exists in the field. So I would also agree with the characterization that they're not jurisdictional wetlands, at least as far as the wetland flagging the B area and the wetland flagging the A area are concerned. I would also agree that they're not isolated lands subject to flooding, both in totality and separate. So, you know, I'm going to open it up for a motion at this point in time. If anyone cares to draft a motion, I think we need to touch on, you know, on those to be. We want to be specific. You know, we can adopt, you know, what I had just discussed, or you can craft your own motion. So. The other alternative, I mean, it's, I don't want to take this up at, I don't want to take this up. I mean, I'm not getting a motion here. It's, you know, this can fail for lack of a motion. I suppose that would be, I don't know what it would be.
My guess would be interpretation is that the commission chooses not to act within a set time period, then it's a approval through lack of action.
It's an acceptance, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's how they're typically done.
What's the, when is the time run on that? That's 20 days from submittal?
21 days.
The
Or it's 20 days plus 7 days
It's
between
21
meetings?
days
yeah, 21 days to open a public hearing, but I don't know what the time is.
to issue an order of conditions. It needs to be done within 21 days. So you could close the meeting now and then issue.
Meeting is closed.
Right. So you could take that time frame to issue the order.
Well, it's
That's
not an order of conditions, it's a
It's an order of resource area
delineation,
delineation.
correct, yeah. You know, I'm not getting a motion on this now, so, you know, at this point in time, we're not meeting for another 14, is it, what are we, this is the second meeting, we're not meeting for another, 21 days, I believe.
I think the cleanest thing to do is if the commission chooses not to issue a motion source area delineation, then a continuance to the next meeting for further consideration would probably be the most appropriate way to go.
I mean, it's not getting a motion of anything. It's, you know, again, that's not out of the question. A motion to continue could be made. That's obviously could be subject to the agreement of the applicant, and I'm not sure what the applicant's concern on that is.
I thought there was a motion to close the hearing, and it was closed, Mr. Chairman.
Well, there's been no further action on the request. So
To make a motion, is it just to accept their delineation? Is that what we're?
Right.
Yeah, so again, the way an ORAD works is really you can accept their flagging or their determination as to what the area is and or whether it's jurisdictional. So a motion based on what they've flagged would involve a review of what type of wetland it is, whether or not it's isolated land subject to flooding, and if there's agreement on the wetlands as flagged.
We weren't able to go to the site visit, so I don't feel comfortable accepting. I mean, we went a few years ago, and I vaguely remember the flags, but I don't feel comfortable accepting the delineation without visiting first.
Would you like to try and schedule another site visit with the applicant's representative, or are you hoping for time of your own accord to visit?
I can go on my own, but, you know, the other commissioners were able to visit, so I don't know if we'd have a quorum of enough people to, no.
This is an interesting question, and I'm not sure if this is what you're getting at in the long form, but do we need a majority of those present to have been on a site visit as a part of this delineation? I'm honestly not sure. I know, for example, for a certificate of compliance, a site visit is required, and you have to indicate the date and spell out any findings if you don't issue a full certificate for a request. For an ORAD, I would have to look into it to see if we need that. To clarify, if we need a majority of those who would be voting to have gone on the site visit.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, most of the commission, in most meetings, or most projects that come before us, very rarely are able to coordinate schedules. You know, again, this is not, we're all, in essence, volunteers appointed by the city, but you know, all of us here have, you know, quote-unquote day jobs. And it's very, and even though that this particular site visit was after work hours, it was after some of our work hours, not after all of our work hours.
Right.
I mean, typically, commission members will, and is true with all the public boards, you know, board members will review the site on their own time.
You're absolutely right, and in most cases, I work in a number of different towns in the Merrimack Valley, and in most cases, majority of the members just can't make it because they have a life. They got
Yeah,
families and dinners and.
What happened the other day, I just view, you know, it wasn't it's not a meeting, it was just, you know, it was several members who wanted to avail themselves to the particular explanation, you know, of the on-site wetland scientist who's here tonight, but, you know, so you were able to, you know, answer any questions,
Right.
you know, with respect to any particular flag or whatnot. I know there weren't a ton of questions. I know there was a couple of questions. I had a couple of questions and that were answered to my satisfaction. But, you know, as I said, I've been out there and viewed this site in particular twice, and I know on several other occasions I've had, you know, the opportunity to be about this site, not actually on this site, but about this site in very close proximity for other reasons. So you know, the familiarity with the site is based on historical knowledge of it, and, you know, and just in our duties of traversing the city and being out there and whatnot. I guess what I'm getting at, Craig, is to answer your question. I don't know the answer to your comment, but
I'm not aware of any regulation that requires that requirement.
I guess my comment is I'm not, and the way I'm looking at it is there was one other member there that's not here tonight.
Unfortunately.
And I think that's what you know, that's what Mr. Thomas is getting at, and it's a valid concern. I for one, it doesn't seem to bother me one way or another. And I know we have two members here tonight. Well, actually, I know Ann's been out there before. Commissioner Chalupa has been out there. I know Commissioner Varnum's been out there before. You know, I don't know if it will help at all. I didn't see anything, and I believe I've already mentioned this. I didn't see anything that was different from our prior site inspection. And I specifically actually asked that question of the wetland scientist, and the comment was there were no changes. So, one, there's no changes from the prior, you know, from the prior submittals, and two, I was satisfied that there were no changes. So I didn't see anything. The site looked, you know, essentially the same. There was probably a few more bottles out there from kids drinking and stuff like that, but, you know, unfortunately, you know, they find places to go that are sort of off the beaten track by the railroad tracks, and that's what happens. But other than that, the site looked essentially the same that it did, you know, a couple of years ago. So about the only difference was the flagging was more prominent this time than it was the last time, and they were much easier to find. So.
If I could provide 2 or 3 points of clarification. The site visit, again, it is important to note that this, and always, it's not actually a deliberation on the merits of the application, because that is a public meeting and would require public posting. If there is a quorum of the board present, there wasn't at this meeting, but beyond that, again, we'd laid this out as a fact-finding mission. Sounds a little silly, but as a way to review the flags as placed and determine the nature of the wetland on the property. While the chairman was discussing a little bit of the history of the site, I pulled out an order of resource area delineation. This is the permit that is associated with the ANRAD, and it's issued both for agreement and for disagreement. In response to Commissioner Chulupka's question, as I interpreted it, there's nothing that would indicate a required site visit, so it's not expressly indicated on the permit that's issued, and as it is defined, the Conservation Commission issues one of the following. So there are 3 items. A is accurate. The boundaries described on the reference plans above and in the abbreviated note, the ANRAD, are accurately drawn for the following resource areas, and we indicate the area for the site. B, it's modified. The boundaries described as referenced are modified by the Conservation Commission from the plans in the ANRAD for the following resource areas, or they're inaccurate for the resource areas as described.
All right, so it's either we agree with the delineation, we modify the delineation, or we disagree with the delineation. So the motion would be one of 3, or a continuance, which I'm kind of gathering the applicant does not want, so that's, perhaps that clarifies it from a little bit earlier, so.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the boundary delineations of the isolated wetlands based on the plans that were submitted to the Conservation Commission, as well as testimony from other commissioners that went to the site visit this past week.
All right, so that's to summarize, a motion to agree with the delineation?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Do I have a second?
Second?
All right. Is there any discussion regarding the motion? All right. All right. I'm going to call roll on this then. All in favor, Commissioner Chulupka?
Aye.
Commissioner Varnum?
Aye.
Chair is yes. Commissioner Mellon?
Aye.
Commissioner Lynch?
Aye.
The ayes have it. There are no nays. All right.
Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Craig, do you have those photographs?
Yes.
All right. Can you take the one that I had indicated and perhaps reproduce those? Or at least for the file, so maybe like a color email, color, do you have the ability to color scan those or anything like that?
Yeah, I can, I think what you're getting at is for the next stage, as discussed, the potential for a filing of a notice of intent based on the delineation on the other side of the railroad tracks, and so I can get that information in whatever format is needed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to, just a second. Moving on to other business, responses to questions from the commission from the last meeting.
Yeah, I have a few updates for some of the issues that were raised at the end of the last meeting, some updates. I apologize if I've forgotten any, but I believe that there were 4 pieces of information that were requested in particular. Commissioner Chulupka had asked for information on the full vegetation management plans for the railroads, for the rights-of-way. I managed to obtain 2 copies. I would prefer to keep one for the file, but I can pass one along and/or make copies. I can give one to Commissioner Chulupka and/or anyone else after the meeting who would like to review it and provide any feedback to me that I can relate to DEP or just to further investigate the ways in which we may better participate with the creation of these plans. So I don't know if any other commissioners would like a copy of these plans.
I'm fine.
Commissioner Mellon had provided some information, a little too close. Commissioner Mellon had provided some information about some sort of river froth, river scum in the Merrimack River, Concord River confluence area. The pictures that were passed along to me and to the rest of the commission, I provided those to the DEP, and I was looking for an email that they were supposed to get to me today, but the substance of what I was told was that they actually sent someone out to the vicinity of the Route 38 bridge to view the area, and they did not see anything that would indicate any difference from work that was performed by the Lowell wastewater treatment plant. So to back up a little bit, and the Lowell wastewater treatment plant is a part of the new MS4. Alicia may know more about this, and I'm going to wade into a territory with EPA permitting where I have a decent grasp, but I may misspeak to a very moderate extent here. My understanding is that the MS4 is a general permit that's issued to municipalities that have public combined sewer systems, as we do in Lowell. As a part of the new, so that started in the 90s, there was an update in the early 2000s, then there was a new permit that was issued in 2008. As a part of that process, wastewater treatment plants were required to map all stormwater outfalls in the city. So anywhere, these are not the combined sewer discharge areas. There are 9 areas in the city of Lowell that are permitted through the same process to discharge combined rainwater and sewage as a part of the mitigation. Now this is, again, I don't believe that any do. There have been very, very few instances of combined sewer discharges in the last decade. But what the mapping was of outfalls that are just from the drain system, from the stormwater system that is not tied to the sewer system. They mapped roughly over 300 in the city of Lowell, and they also started a testing procedure to determine if there are any illicit discharges. The biggest worry for illicit discharges with the stormwater outfalls is apparently, at least based on the information that I've been provided, businesses, homes, anyone who chooses, who so chooses to connect a sewer line to a drain line, it would take willful malfeasance to do so. As a part of the testing, the drain outfalls in the Concord River area, several of them some time ago had hits. What that means is they're testing for E. coli colonies, and there's a certain threshold above which might be is an indication of potential illicit discharges. After those hits in that area, they were subsequently retested and were below the threshold. In my communication with the wastewater treatment plant about that issue, the sense was that this was more a sign of the heat and the low water table, the lack of running water in the entire system than of illicit discharges. But that, as a part of this general permit, they're required to monitor this and selectively test. Unfortunately, I was also provided the information that they do have, the DEP used to have 2 stormwater sewage people who would go in as sort of a rapid response and test where requested, as in this instance. And again, they did send someone to take a look, but their rapid testing unit, I guess, was cut back from 2 people to 0 people. So it was difficult for them to do any work in that way. But again, they had indicated that they were in agreement with the wastewater treatment plant's view. Are there any questions about that? I know this continues to be an issue, and what I was told moving forward is that if there are any changes in the way that it looks, the amount, whether it slows or accelerates, if it stops when it had existed before, these are all signs of potential changes, and then to try and communicate those to me and through me to the DEP or directly to the DEP as quickly as possible so we can try and get someone back on the scene and take a look and see what can be determined. So I know that it's not an immediately, it's not going to lead to immediate action, but at least we're trying to move in that direction. So there was a question about what's known as in Mass General Law as 53G, which is the ability of the Conservation Commission to hire an outside consultant or a third-party reviewer. Now, this is a little bit trickier for the Lowell Conservation Commission or any conservation commission because there is the ability already both in the Wetland Protection Act, but also in the city ordinance to hire someone to do a third-party review for projects that are very difficult or complicated. For example, we've had, if we look at tonight, I think it's probably better to use a hypothetical. Let's say there was something that was in very fine gradations within a flood zone, and we're looking at the type of development and whether it would meet the performance standards. We could have the applicant actually put money forward to hire someone else to review what they provided us, because when you get to very fine, very technical information, we have certain skills, but sometimes there are skills that are missing among the commission members. Again, that ability has always existed for this commission, but the snag is a technical one in that we need official rules and procedures with which to exercise that ability. And I think the commission is aware I've been working this late 2010 and early 2011 on a regulation update for the commission. A part of that will be language that'll spell out this process. Once that language exists, under the previous authorization, I believe we would have the ability to request outside consultants or third-party review, but that is strengthened through the consideration of the Mass General Law 53G, which is, again, something a city council or board of selectmen would adopt. The city of Lowell has not yet adopted it, which would give that power to any and all land use boards and commissions. So that would further provide legal guidance as to how to utilize that ability. So both of those are, I'm actively working with the planning department on the regulations update for the commission, which may actually be before the commission in a finalized draft form within the next few meetings. The 53G adoption is a somewhat different issue, although related, and that will go through city council and will have some impact on how this plays out for this commission.
Craig, I know you touched upon it briefly, can you nail it down a little bit more as to when you think you'll get some language in front of us for a proposal? That we can, at least a working proposal that we can start to, make additions, modifications to, so the full commission gets a chance to digest what you've been working on?
The latest it would be, I believe, would be 2 meetings from now. I'm working to get a document put together, for the commission's next meeting, actually.
All right. The reason why I say that is I like to get it go, because I understand that at some point in time, this has to become part of the city ordinance, or it has to be approved by the city council. And there's some, I don't want to say time limitation, but there's some pending time where that's going to be brought before the council in relatively short order. And I just want to be able to have the ability for the commission to take what time they feel is necessary to hash it out, make modifications and comments and changes to it, and be able to spend some time with it. So we don't feel under the gun about having to approve something just so we can get it in front of the council in some form. I'd rather work with a rougher draft and get the ball rolling as opposed to a more refined draft, but be a little bit under pressure because it's going in front of the city council.
Yeah, I've not been made aware of any specific intentions as to a timetable for moving this forward. My plan has been, because of the nature of a regulations update, it's not clear to me what the specific nature of legal requirements for updating the rules and regulations. Our ordinance simply says that the Conservation Commission may promulgate such rules and regulations as it deems necessary to carry out its work. But I think as a part of good governance and transparency, when this is considered in a rough form before the commission, I'd like to publicize it as a public hearing in the paper. We can't really notify anyone because everyone in the city of Lowell there's not really a sense of an abutter, just has a stake in it as this. It would be a general change to some, more of a tweak to some of the procedures for the commission, publicize in the paper, put it on the agenda, open a public hearing to consider the matter.
Now, how does that differ? The Wetland Protection Act specifically authorizes the commission to bring on a third-party consultant and to have the additional cost of that fee process. In plain English, the applicant has to pay for it. How does that differ then from the language of Section 53G of, what is it, Chapter 44?
Yeah, Chapter 44, Section 53G. It's the way that I have understood it thus far is that, again, under the Wetlands Protection Act, any local conservation commissions do have the ability to require a peer review or submission of information, to have the information peer reviewed, as does our ordinance give this body the ability to do that. The issue has been, and this is the guidance that the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions gives local commissions, is that it is very unwise to exercise that ability without set policies and procedures as to how the money is given. Is it given through a passbook, which is a sort of like a joint checking account between the applicant and the city? How is it managed? How is it spent? And then how is it tracked? There are general procedures for these things, but they differ between different funding sources and different types of review. And it has been strongly recommended to not exercise this ability under either the state regulation or the local ordinance without set policies and procedures. Now,
That's what 53G comes in.
Yes,
So
now that-
53G, so I don't want to belabor the point, because I don't want to, we're pretty much all done tonight, but and I don't want to cut you off, but I am going to cut you off, because this meeting's going actually kind of long. But what the Act gives us, and the regulations give us the authority to review third-party consultants at the cost or in cost back to the applicant. 53G then deals with the actual money and the funding required in the requirements as to how that's handled with respect to dealing with and appropriating and the RFPs that are required, and how we can determine those with respect to actually bringing on board the third-party consultant, so to speak. Is that correct?
yes, that's
And
generally,
that's what has to
generally
be,
how I've understood.
and it's the money portion more that has to be approved by the city council and adopted through the regulations, whereas the actual, how we determine the appropriateness of the third party as the substantive matters are just done through our own internal regulations.
Yes,
and our own
yes, the
internal-
action of a third-party reviewer, what company really would do that, in what types of information and in what way they would review is on the purview of the commission, and that would be a part of the regulation update.
And we can do this all in one thing, but it's the city council approves the regulation or approves wording that deals more with the funding aspect of it, the holding of the money, and when it's released and how it's accepted and who handles it and how it's dealt with while it's in the city's possession, and how the consultant is paid for and whatnot, and the limits and everything. Whereas the Act itself specifies, we just create regulations as to how we want to interact with that and choose the peer as with respect to the substantive issues, actually what they're doing, what we're using their expertise
Yeah,
for.
the state regulations give some guidance as to the substance, the nature of the fixed dollar cap that would be requested.
Okay. And was there anything else?
One other, there was a question about a property potential, some potential. Let's think of how it was phrased. Something had occurred on Humphrey Street. I was requested that I look into it. I did, and there was something of. Again, it's hard for me because I can't pass on private property to try and look for wetlands violations, but from the public way, it's as though there was some tree cutting in an area that was close enough to a resource area, as far as I could tell, to be worthy of a formal letter. I'm compiling that now. I believe I have the correct address for the house to say, please be aware that you have jurisdictional areas on your property, and that any work that you may need to do, any work that you choose to do, will need to be reviewed. But it didn't rise to the level of requiring enforcement, as I could see it.
Okay. Any? All right. I know we have a couple of things to sign, but I think without anything further, do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Good night. Thank you.